A lot of time has passed since then, but I still hear a whisper that says, "You forgot me." Some stories are just legends, whispers in the dark meant to scare us. But others are real. Tonight, we bring you the story of the Forgotten Manor, a place where 4 friends entered, but only 3 escaped. What happened inside still haunts them to this day. I should have said no. Looking back now, I know that was my chance. My one moment to shut it all down, to walk away before it was too late. But the thing about stupid decisions is that they never feel stupid in the moment, especially when your friends are watching, waiting for you to make a choice. We were sitting in my living room, bored out of our minds. Saturday night, no plans, nothing to do. That's when Sam had the bright idea. The manor, he said suddenly, like it was the most obvious thing in the world. For a second, no one reacted. Mark shifted uncomfortably. Anna frowned. I just stared at Sam, waiting for him to laugh, to say he was joking. He wasn't. "You're serious?" Anna asked. Sam smirked. "Of course I am. No one else has the guts." "I say we go tonight." Mark scoffed. "Dude, that place is cursed." "Cursed?" Sam rolled his eyes. "It's just a house." It wasn't just a house. Everyone in town knew about the manor. A huge, decaying mansion on the edge of the woods, abandoned for decades. Nobody knew exactly when it was built or who owned it. The only thing everyone agreed on was that bad things happened there. People claimed it was haunted, that anyone who went inside came out different. If they came out at all, "I don't know, man," I muttered. "That place gives me a bad feeling." Sam turned to me, grinning like he'd been waiting for this. "You always back out of stuff like this." "I do not." "You totally do," Mark chimed in. "Remember last Halloween? The asylum? That place was condemned." "Excuses." Anna smirked. I clenched my jaw. "Fine. What's the plan?" Sam's grin widened. "Simple. We go in, walk around, and stay for 1 hour. That's it. Just to prove we did it." 1 hour. That didn't sound so bad. At least, not at the time. The walk to the manor was almost worse than the idea of going inside. The house sat on the outskirts of town, past an old dirt road that hadn't been maintained in years. No streetlights, no signs, just darkness and the distant hum of crickets. The trees lined the path like twisted figures, their branches clawing at the night sky. Every step felt heavier the closer we got. Then finally we saw it, the manor. Even from a distance, it looked wrong, like it didn't belong, like it had been built by something that didn't quite understand what a house was supposed to be. The walls were cracked and covered in ivy. The windows were shattered in places, boarded up in others. The front gates were rusted, bent inward like something had forced its way inside. And the door was open, just a few inches. Not broken, not kicked in, just slightly ajar like it was waiting for us. "This is so stupid," Anna muttered. "We could just turn around right now." Sam smirked. "Are you scared?" She shot him a glare. "No, I just don't want to die in some rotting house, because you want to prove a point. Then don't die," Sam said, and with that he stepped forward, pushing the door open wider. It groaned loudly, the sound echoing into the darkness inside. I swallowed hard. I didn't want to do this. Every instinct in my body screamed at me to turn around. But Mark went in next, then Anna. If I stayed outside alone, that might have been even worse. So I followed them inside. The second I stepped over the threshold, I felt it. The shift. The air was heavy, thick. It smelled damp like rotting wood and something else, something old. The temperature dropped almost instantly. I could see my breath in the dim light. The foyer was massive. A grand staircase stretched up to the second floor, its faded red carpet torn in places. A huge chandelier hung above us, its crystals covered in dust and cobwebs. The walls were lined with paintings, portraits of people long dead, their faces watching us with too much intensity. Sam whistled. "Damn, this place is huge." I barely heard him. Something felt wrong, like we weren't supposed to be here. Then behind us, bang. We all jumped. The door had slammed shut. Mark ran back, grabbing the handle. He yanked on it, pulled hard. It didn't budge. "What the hell?" he muttered. "Maybe the wind?" Sam offered. There was no wind. And deep inside the house, in the darkness ahead, something creaked. We weren't alone. The silence was the worst part. Not the darkness. Not the smell. Not even the heavy air pressing down on us like we had stepped into something alive. It was the silence, the unnatural, suffocating kind that made every little sound echo too loudly. My own breathing felt deafening in my ears. Mark was still yanking at the door handle, his frustration growing with each pull. This doesn't make sense. It wasn't locked when we came in. Old houses shift, Sam said, waving his flashlight around the room like he wasn't the least bit concerned. Doors swell, frames twist. It probably just shut on its own. It slammed on its own, Anna corrected. And if this door is stuck, what happens if the other ones are too? Sam grinned. Then I guess we're staying the night. No one laughed. I turned away from them, scanning the hallway ahead with my flashlight. The dust in the air caught the beam, swirling like disturbed ash. The paintings lining the walls were old, too old. Their colors had faded into muted browns and yellows. But the eyes weren't faded at all. They watched us. And then, one of them moved. I sucked in a breath. Just a trick of the light, I told myself. Just dust in the air, or my mind playing games. Then a soft sound whispered through the hall. S-H-H-H-H-H-H-H. I froze. Did you hear that? I whispered. Anna nodded, her expression tight. Yeah. Sam, of course, shook his head. What? The wind? You guys are freaking out over nothing. It wasn't the wind. It was inside the house. Mark finally gave up on the door, muttering a curse under his breath. So what now? Sam pointed his flashlight toward the hallway. We look around. 1 hour, remember? I checked my phone. The screen was black. No signal. No battery. Just dead. I looked up. Guys, my phone just... Then I saw it. At the end of the hallway, just outside the reach of our flashlights, a shadow moved. I wasn't the only one who saw it. Anna took a step closer to me. There was something. Sam waved his flashlight at the spot. Nothing. Just empty space. I exhaled, shaking my head. Forget this. Let's just get this over with. We moved deeper inside. The air changed as we walked. The walls stretched taller. The floor creaked in places that shouldn't have been able to creak. And the deeper we went, the heavier the silence became. The whispers followed us, faint at first, like a distant breeze. But then, S-H-H-H-H-H-H-H. A long, slow exhale right behind us. I spun around. No one was there. I wasn't sure how much time had passed, but I knew one thing for certain. The house wasn't just old. It was alive, and it was playing with us. I wanted to leave. I didn't care if the door was stuck, if my friends called me a coward, if Sam laughed at me for the rest of my life. Every instinct I had was screaming at me to turn around and get out. But the problem was, there was nowhere to go. We were deep inside the house now, standing at the base of the grand staircase. The second floor loomed above us, swallowed in shadows. A huge mirror stood at the landing, cracked down the middle. And in the reflection, there was something else there. I saw it before I even realized what I was looking at. A figure just behind us, standing in the darkness. No features, no face, just a shape watching. And then, before I could blink, before I could even breathe, the mirror shattered. A sudden, violent explosion of glass. I threw my arms up to shield my face, stumbling back as shards rained down the staircase. My flashlight tumbled from my grip, rolling across the floor. And when I grabbed it and looked up, I was alone. The room had changed. The grand staircase was gone. The hallway behind me had stretched, the walls pulsing as if they were breathing. The dust in the air had thickened, swirling in patterns I couldn't understand. I turned in a slow circle, my flashlight shaking in my hands. Guys? No answer. The house had separated us. A door creaked somewhere in the distance. I swallowed hard, forcing myself to breathe. Think. Find the others. Get out. I picked a direction and started walking. The hallway didn't make sense. It was too long. Much too long. I passed door after door. All of them closed. Some had locks. Others had no handles at all. The wallpaper was peeling, revealing something beneath. Not wood, not brick, but something else. And then, from behind one of the doors, a voice. Muffled. Whispering. Not my friends. Something else. I pressed my ear to the door, my breath hitching in my throat. The whispering stopped, and then, right against the wood, a knock. I stumbled back, my heart slamming against my ribs. The handle turned. I ran down the endless hallway, past the closed doors, past the portraits of people whose eyes moved as I passed. Then, up ahead, something stepped into the hallway. I skidded to a stop. My flashlight flickered over a tall, thin shape, standing motionless in the dark. No face, no features, just a shadow, waiting for me to move. I did the only thing I could do. I turned and ran the other way. And behind me, from deep in the house, I heard it. A whisper. "You're finally home." I ran. I didn't know where I was going. There was no logic to the layout of the house anymore. The hallways twisted, stretched impossibly long, doors appearing and disappearing as I passed them. My footsteps barely echoed, swallowed by the thick, suffocating air. But I wasn't alone. I could feel it. Something was behind me. Not footsteps, not a shadow I could chase away with my flashlight. Something else. A presence, heavy and unmoving, watching me without eyes. The space around me seemed to bend in on itself, making every breath harder to take. I turned a corner and nearly crashed into a door. Unlike the others, this one was slightly open. A sliver of absolute darkness peeked through the crack. Then, the whispering started again. Not from behind me, from inside the room. Soft, urgent, hungry. I knew I shouldn't open the door, but something about it pulled at me, like it had been waiting for me all along. I swallowed hard and pushed it open. My flashlight beam barely cut through the blackness. The room was small, too small. For walls, no windows. Just a chair sitting in the middle of the floor. And someone was sitting in it. A figure, hunched over, their head low, their arms resting limply at their sides. I froze. "Mark?" I whispered. No answer. My hand tightened around the flashlight. I stepped closer, the floor groaning beneath me. "Hey, Mark, it's me." The figure twitched, just slightly. Then, slowly, it lifted its head. My stomach dropped. It wasn't Mark. It wasn't anyone. Its face was wrong. Too smooth, too stretched, as if someone had taken human skin and pulled it over a shape that wasn't meant to be human. And then, it smiled. Not a normal smile, not even an unnatural one. This was a smile made by something that had only ever seen humans from a distance. A copy, a mockery. My body moved before my brain could. I turned and ran. The whispering erupted into laughter behind me, scraping against my ears like nails on glass. I hit the hallway, gasping for breath, but the walls had changed again. The doors were gone. The hallway was gone. And standing in front of me, blocking the only path forward, was another version of me. But it wasn't me. It stood there, identical in every way. Same clothes, same messy hair, same wide eyes. But its head was tilted too far to the side, and it wasn't blinking. Then it whispered in my voice, "You can't leave." I couldn't move. I knew I should run, should turn back, should do anything but stand there staring at myself. But my body felt frozen, like the air around me had turned to cement. The other me, the thing, just stood there, watching, its head tilted even further, the bones in its neck cracking like dry twigs. Then it took a step toward me, not a normal step, a jerky, unnatural lurch, like it wasn't used to walking, like it wasn't used to having a body. I stumbled back. My heartbeat slammed in my ears. This wasn't real. It couldn't be real. Then it spoke again. "You can't leave." But this time, the voice wasn't mine. It was close, almost right, but something about it was off, like it had been stretched, slowed, played through an old tape recorder where the words melted at the edges. I turned and ran. The hallway twisted around me. The walls breathed, their surface shifting beneath the peeling wallpaper. My flashlight flickered, just for a second, but when it came back on, the hallway had changed. It wasn't empty anymore. The walls were lined with mirrors. Each one held a reflection of me, standing still. But the reflections weren't right. Some were smiling. Others had no mouths at all. One of them was just staring at me, its head twitching like it was waiting for something. Then, all at once, the mirrors shattered. I ducked, covering my head as glass rained down, cutting into my arms, my neck. My flashlight spun across the floor, and when I looked up, I wasn't in the hallway anymore. I was in a room I didn't recognize. The floor was covered in a thick, black mold, creeping up the walls like veins. The air was damp, heavy with the stench of rot. In the middle of the room, an old wooden chair sat facing the wall, and in it, someone was sitting there, not moving. I could only see the back of their head. Short black hair, a familiar jacket. "Mark?" My voice cracked. No response. I stepped forward, every part of me screaming not to. The air shifted. The shadows in the corners stirred. Then, the person in the chair twitched. Slowly, they began to turn, but not like a person turning, like a puppet pulled by invisible strings. Their body creaked, their arms hanging limply as their head twisted toward me. And then I saw their face. It was Mark, or at least it looked like Mark, but his eyes were missing. Just empty sockets, black and bottomless. Then his mouth, too wide now, stretching, tearing at the corners, opened, and a whisper poured out. Not from him, from the house itself. "You belong to me now." I ran. I don't even remember turning. I just remember my legs moving before my brain could process it. My heart was pounding so hard it hurt, my breath coming in short, sharp gasps. The hallways were different again. Longer, narrower. The doors were gone. Just endless walls stretching into the darkness. The only sound was my footsteps slamming against the warped wooden floor. Then, a voice. Not the whispering. Not the house. A real voice. "Hey, over here. Mark." My stomach twisted. Mark. But I had just seen him. Or something pretending to be him. I hesitated. What if it wasn't really him? But then I saw him. He was standing at the end of the hall, waving frantically. "Dude, hurry up." I didn't think. I just ran. When I reached him, he grabbed my arm and pulled me through a doorway. We stumbled into a room that shouldn't exist. A dusty old library, the shelves stacked with books, so old their covers had disintegrated. The second we crossed the threshold, the air felt different, lighter, like we had stepped outside the house's grip just for a moment. Mark was panting, his hands shaking. "Dude, what the hell is happening?" I stared at him, my mouth dry. I don't know. He looked just like he always had. The same messy hair, the same nervous energy. But the image of what I had seen, of him sitting in that chair, his empty eyes, his too wide mouth, was burned into my brain. I stepped back. He noticed. "What?" he asked. I swallowed hard. "How do I know it's really you?" He blinked, his expression shifting, hurt, confused. But then, behind him, I saw movement. Anna. She stumbled into the room from another doorway, her hair tangled, her face pale. The second she saw us, her eyes went wide with relief. "Oh my God," she breathed. I thought I was alone. Something in my chest loosened. If she was here too, then maybe, just maybe, this was real. Then a third voice. "Guys?" "Sam." He stepped into the light, looking wrong. His face was too pale, his lips slightly parted like he had forgotten how to close them. His eyes darted around the room, blinking too much, too fast. His hands twitched at his sides. Something was wrong with him. "Sam?" Mark asked cautiously. Sam didn't answer right away. Then, slowly, he grinned. "I found something," he said. His voice was too flat, too calm. Anna took a step back. "Well, what do you mean?" Sam tilted his head. "A way out." Something in the air shifted. Mark tensed. I could feel it too. A change. The house was still watching, still listening. And Sam wasn't Sam anymore. Not completely. But before I could say anything, he turned and walked out of the room. And we had no choice but to follow him. I didn't want to follow him. Every instinct screamed at me to stop, to grab Mark and Anna and go the opposite direction. But we were trapped. The manor had already changed the house once. Who's to say it wouldn't do it again? We had no way out. No choice. So we followed Sam. The air felt wrong as we walked. The library doors had vanished the moment we left, sealing us in this new, twisting part of the house. The hallway was lined with old, rotting wallpaper, peeling in long, curling strips. The floor groaned under our weight. Sam walked ahead, his steps too steady, his shoulders too stiff. He hadn't spoken since he told us he found a way out. Anna leaned in close to me, whispering, "Something's wrong with him." "I know," I whispered back. Then Sam stopped. We nearly bumped into him. He stood in front of an open doorway that hadn't been there a second ago. Behind it, stairs, leading down, the basement. "Come on," Sam said, his voice dull. Anna stiffened. "Are you crazy? We are not going in a basement." Mark swallowed hard. "Dude, why would the way out be in the basement?" Sam smiled. It wasn't real. It was a smile stretched over something that didn't understand smiling. "You'll see," he said. I looked at Mark, then at Anna. I didn't want to go down there. None of us did. But Sam was already moving, and the hallway behind us was shrinking. Literally, the walls were closing in, folding in on themselves like the house was forcing us forward. We had no choice. I grabbed Anna's hand, and we stepped onto the stairs. The second we did, the door slammed shut behind us. The light from our flashlights barely cut through the dark. The stairs stretched down forever. Each step creaked, the wood moist beneath my shoes. The air was heavy with the scent of mold and damp rot. Then I noticed something. The walls were wrong. They weren't brick. They weren't wood. They were soft, like flesh. I reached out, pressing my hand against the surface, and it moved. Something beneath the wall twitched. I jerked my hand back. My stomach twisted. I looked at Anna, my flashlight shaking. "This place isn't a house anymore." She didn't respond, because up ahead, Sam had stopped walking. He was standing still, his back straight, his head slightly tilted, listening. Then he whispered, "It's awake." Before I could ask what he meant, something whispered back. Not from Sam. From the walls. From the house itself. "We know." And then, the last step collapsed beneath us. And we fell. We fell forever. It wasn't like falling down normal stairs. The second the steps disappeared beneath us, we weren't just tumbling into a basement. We were falling into something else. The air around me felt thick, almost like water, pressing against my skin. My ears rang. My flashlight spun wildly through the darkness, the beam cutting through shifting shapes. Not walls, not floors, but something alive, something that twisted and pulsed in the black void. Then suddenly I hit the ground, the impact sent a sharp pain up my leg. I groaned, rolling onto my side, gasping for air. It was pitch black. I fumbled for my flashlight, my hands trembling, my fingers numb. When I clicked it on, the light barely pushed through the thick, moving darkness. "Mark," my voice cracked. And a soft cough to my left. My heart leapt. The beam of my flashlight landed on Mark. He was sprawled out on the damp floor, his face pale, eyes wide. He was breathing heavily, but otherwise seemed okay. I swung my flashlight around, searching. "Anna? Sam?" Mark groaned, sitting up. "Where the hell are we?" The room was impossible. There were no walls, no doors, just an endless expanse of black mist, shifting like liquid shadow. Anna's voice came from behind us. "I'm here." I turned and nearly cried with relief when I saw her. She was shaken, but she was okay. But Sam was gone. I hesitated. "Did you see where Sam went?" Anna shook her head. "He was in front of me when we fell. But when I hit the ground, he wasn't here." Mark stood up, brushing dust off his jacket. "Great. So now we're trapped in some kind of what? Void? Dungeon? This isn't even a real place." He wasn't wrong. This wasn't a basement. It wasn't part of the manor. It was something else. Then, the whispering started again. Not distant this time. Not coming from the walls. Right next to us. The three of us froze. The whispers grew louder. Words we couldn't understand. Voices that overlapped. High and low. Young and old. Then, footsteps. Slow. Deliberate. Coming from the dark mist ahead of us. A figure emerged from the shadows. Tall. Thin. Its limbs were too long, its head tilted too far to one side. It didn't walk like a person. It moved like a puppet, pulled by invisible strings. Then it spoke. "You came looking for me." My skin crawled. The voice was layered, like 100 people speaking at once, their words overlapping, stretching, breaking apart. Mark grabbed my arm. "Dude." The thing stepped forward, and as it did, the darkness behind it peeled away, revealing doors. Hundreds of doors. Each one looked different. Some were old and wooden. Some were hospital doors. Some were rusted iron gates. Others were bedroom doors, school lockers, elevator doors. All of them stretched into the black void, flickering in and out of existence. And then I understood. These weren't just doors. They were choices. The house had brought us here for a reason. And now, we had to choose our way out. The figure lifted its hand, extending one long, thin finger toward the doors. It smiled. "Let's see what scares you the most." I couldn't breathe. The doors stretched into the darkness, flickering like mirages. Too many, too different, too wrong. Each one seemed to hum, vibrating with something unseen. The air felt electric, thick with expectation. The figure in front of us stood motionless, its long, thin limbs hanging at its sides. Its head was still tilted, still watching, still smiling, waiting. I knew, somehow, that we had no choice. We had to pick a door. Mark took a step back. We can't do this. What if we picked the wrong one? Anna's breathing was shaky. They're all wrong. She was right. None of these doors belonged here. They weren't real. Or maybe they were too real. Then the whispering started again. But this time, it was our own voices. My flashlight flickered, and suddenly, the doors weren't just doors anymore. I saw flashes of memories inside them. A hospital room, a childhood bedroom, a broken-down elevator, a flooded hallway. Each one called to us, pulling at something deep inside. Mark suddenly gasped. No, his flashlight was aimed at a door, a small, blue door, slightly ajar. I couldn't see what was behind it, but his face had gone pale. No, I'm not. The door slammed open, and then Mark was gone. He didn't step inside. He didn't get pulled. One blink, and he was just gone. The only sound was the door swinging shut. Anna screamed, "Mark!" She lunged forward, but before she could reach the door, another one opened on its own. This time it was a bathroom door. Water spilled out from the frame, pooling at our feet. The smell of chlorine and damp towels filled the air. Anna froze. "No," she whispered. She stepped back, 1, 2 steps. Her body trembled. Her hands clawed at her own arms like she was trying to wake herself up. "Not again. Please, not again." I grabbed her wrist. "Anna, don't." But something grabbed her first. A pale, wet hand reached out from the open door and dragged her inside. Her scream cut off mid-breath. The bathroom door slammed shut. And just like that, she was gone too. I couldn't move. I couldn't think. It was just me now. I turned back toward the figure. It was smiling wider. Its head twitched. Only one left. I didn't answer. I couldn't. The doors around me flickered faster now, like static on a dying screen. They were all waiting. Then, one opened. My stomach dropped. It was my old bedroom. The same creaky bed. The same faded posters on the wall. The same open closet door. The one I never used to close, no matter how scared I was. Something breathed from inside the closet. No. I turned to run, but the floor was gone. Only darkness. The figure tilted its head. You already know how this ends. The door dragged me inside. I fell through the door. I hit the ground hard, my head spinning, my lungs gasping for air like I had just been underwater. The darkness was gone, replaced by cold, damp earth beneath my hands. I coughed, choking on my own breath. My body ached, every inch of me screaming in exhaustion. Then, a groan beside me. I turned my head and saw Mark lying a few feet away, his eyes barely open. His face was pale, his breathing ragged, but he was alive. Another cough to my right. Anna. She was curled up on her side, trembling, clutching her arms like she was still expecting something to drag her back. Her eyes darted wildly before locking onto me. "We're out," she whispered. I blinked. The sky above us was a deep shade of early morning gray. The air was cold, damp. The trees surrounded us, their twisted branches silhouetted against the fading night. We were outside, alive. I almost laughed in disbelief. Then I realized Sam was gone. I twisted around, scanning the trees, the ground, anywhere. Sam? Nothing. Mark sat up, rubbing his face. Where is he? Anna turned toward the house, except there was no house. Not in the way it had been before. The manor was still standing, but it was wrong. The windows were dark, like the house had been abandoned for a century, dust and cobwebs covering its once grand entrance, like it had never been alive at all. I stared at it, my breath catching. The house had changed. It was still here, but at the same time, it wasn't. I didn't want to know what would happen if we stepped back inside. Mark pulled at my arm. We have to go. I didn't argue. We ran. For the next year, we searched for Sam. The police didn't believe us. They said the house had been abandoned for decades, that no one had lived there in over 100 years, that it was just an old, empty building, not the thing we had seen. No records, no history, just a place that no one dared to go near. Sam was never found. At first I thought maybe he got lost, maybe he had escaped some other way. But deep down, I knew the truth. The house had taken him, and sometimes late at night, when everything is quiet, when the world feels just a little too still, I hear it, a whisper, "You forgot me." Some places should never be explored. Some things, once seen, can never be forgotten. Have a true horror story? Send it to us by email in the description, and we might feature it in our next video.